Good afternoon. Welcome to the July 17th, 2023 EIC meeting. I will ask Member Greg to open us, Greg Appel, in prayer, please.
Please pray with me. Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for blessing us to live in this wonderful community. We thank you for those of us that serve the community, that seek to find better ways to improve upon the great place that we live. Lord, we just pray that you would give us rain and continue to provide for us in all the ways that we need. Lord, we just pray for your direction as we consider the business before this committee today. We ask this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Announcements? Anyone? No? All right. Visitors forum. Do we have any speakers signed up?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. So item 5A.
I signed up. For the visitors? Oh, yes, she did. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Barbara.
Barbara Jewell Ferguson. I live here in Kerrville. And one of the things, as the EIC considers what they can do as far as funding infrastructure to help economic development in Kerrville, and I know later in this meeting we're going to be considering one action, but this is something that, as I read the Kerrville long-range water plan from 2018, it became clear that we had strategies outlined in 2018 that were recommended to us, one of which was undertaken in the redrilling of the Ellenberger well. But unfortunately, that well has been shown to probably not be a new source of water. It said that as we considered these strategies, that the development of a local Ellenberger aquifer well and a remote Ellenberger aquifer well out in the county were recommended, as well as conservation efforts. Currently, we're still in stage 1. I don't see us implementing the conservation efforts that we could, but perhaps EIC could consider funding that would help the city obtain property that they could then use for that remote Ellenberger well. That, according to this document, is what we need to be doing next. And that in 2018 was projected to be a $12 million project. This is a big deal. It's going to be expensive, and we are already, according to their projections, in a deficit. We are in a water deficit right now, and it repeatedly in the water study referred to a severe drought situation. If we went back into a 1950s type of drought, that we were going to be in deficit. Well, here we are, and we are in that case. We are in a history-breaking drought. And so I'd like the EIC, as they consider any spending, to please think about water and how you can help us, because that affects every aspect of development in this city. And without it, we can go nowhere. So I just ask you to consider, if I spend this money here, will I have any to go there? Thank you for your time.
Okay. Item 5A. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? All right. Passes 7-0. Monthly reports, item 6A, KEDC update.
Oh, not that one, not yet.
Martin, we're not there yet.
No. But pretty good. Madam Chair, members of the board, I'll start with some of our local activity. KEDC was selected by the Texas Economic Development Council as one of 4 cities in Texas that's being studied as far as a workforce initiative, exemplifying resiliency and economic sustainability. And this specifically for our work with the education and quarterly roundtables that we've been doing here for the last couple of years. The site selection firm of Ernst & Young, they were engaged by the TDC to promote 4 cities in Texas. We're one of them. So they were in town last month working on footage, some of the content, some of the videos and podcasts, a series of podcasts that they're going to be releasing. They'll be featuring Kerrville, the KDC, and again, this is going to be nationally or really internationally. It is a project that's being funded through the Economic Development Administration. This is through the CARES Act, which again is specifically designed to promote EDOs like ourselves that are working on sustainable strategies for economic development. The following week, they came back and we were interviewed in their podcast. This was filmed at Pint and Plow. It's obviously a place that shows very, very well, especially with the Kerrville as a new Kerrville slogan. Some of our leadership that were there as far as virtual interviews for the show. Again, thanks to some of you all that were involved with that, and we're just excited to see how it's going to come out and what's going to come out of it once they start promoting it. Along those lines, the roundtables, our second quarterly roundtable was in June last month. We had about 26 leaders in industry, education, workforce, and higher education. We also had the president of Workforce Solutions from San Antonio who came in and representatives from the Uvalde region and Concho Valley, which is San Angelo. We provided an economic development report, information and opportunities as far as some of the local companies. And again, the main goal here was to address the job needs and the workforce situation for our local companies with our regional partners. So it was very good that our regional partners pulled in for this. And actually, Ernst & Young was there at that meeting taking footage for the promotional thing that they're going to be doing for the top 4 cities in Texas. Next quarterly roundtable, that's scheduled for October. We don't have a date yet, but again, we're looking to bring it in. That's the time of year we usually bring in a high-profile speaker. The I-10 committee, we participated in the I-10 committee meeting in San Antonio. And then after that, there was a virtual one as well. So we've been asked to, again, provide some input as far as the priority of highway projects, and that's from Ozona all the way to Seguin for the next 30 years. So reviewing the projects as far as priority, the schedule, added investments. So it's good for the KDC. Actually, City of Kerrville and Kerr County are there as well. So from the standpoint of economic development, being able to have a seat at the table and just kind of say some of the things that are helping our community and growing here in the next few years. We had a business article that was printed in the Business View. That is a national publication. It's out of California. Profiles communities that are on the rise. So they had a snapshot about the local economy. They started honing in on some of the tourist activity that we have in the community and why people are investing in Kerrville as well. So again, great publicity at the national stage and one of our marketing and PR tools as far as promoting Kerrville outbound for inbound investment. Now looking at some of the projects that we have, next week we're meeting with a prospect. They're looking to establish operations in Kerr County. It's a metal fabricator, so we already have a couple of those. Very similar to a Fox Tank, except they're in the automotive sector. So much smaller in what they do. They are in need of welders, and they're looking to increase their capacity. And then we've got another meeting next week, and this is with a regional logistics company that's looking to come into the area, help some of the local businesses, again, added capacity. So again, this is just part of our BREE program, business retention expansion, going out there, knocking on doors and making sure that our local companies that are in the supply chain for our local industry have what they need or any help from us as well. The logistics, both of these companies actually were asking about apprenticeship programs and internships, so that bodes very well for our local school districts. Project 1954, we hosted them last week. So it's a company that's searching for some real estate. Specifically, they're looking for an industrial area, which in Kerrville, we've got the airport area and then out by Ingram. They are a distributor of construction materials and equipment. It's about $12.5 million in capital investment, about a 20-plus person operation. It's a mid-sized facility, but again, great opportunity for us, helping us grow incrementally and just really helping develop those two bookends as far as the industrial parks or zones that we have. Our top project, that's Mount Saddle. We spent a good, Katie and myself, a good 90% of our time working this particular project for the last 7-8 months. It's a manufacturer of advanced structures. They are from a major city in Latin America. They're looking at Kerrville. We are in competition with 3, maybe 4 other cities in the state of Texas. It's a multi-million-dollar facility, and from here they would be supplying Texas and the Midwest. Now, we have been working with them almost on a daily basis and hosting them or visiting with them like every couple of weeks. So a big thank you for our leadership in the last couple of months. I know we've leaned on some of you all, actually almost all of you all, as far as meeting with a prospect. And it's very important from an economic development standpoint where we're working these projects. Want to show support, put our best foot forward, really showing unity. And that not only do we support the company, but we support economic development. So, I mean, that's what these companies are looking for. It's not rocket science. They're coming in, they're looking for, can they partner with the community? Can they, is there a pro-business environment? And if they make a phone call, whether it's a local EDC or leadership, will the person on the other end of the line pick up the phone? It's not that complicated, but we've done very good, you know, in checking off those boxes. They are going to be back again in a couple of weeks. They're main stakeholders, and these are 2 groups that are coming in. Again, just part of the process as far as them coming in and looking at the final details as far as infrastructure, looking at the proposed site, and meeting some of our community leadership. So again, thanks for doing that. Austin, at the state capitol. So now I got to change hats. So again, with this project, we're now in the process of scheduling some meetings in the next month, going into September with Representative Murr, Senator Flores, and then the chiefs of staff for the governor, lieutenant governor, and the speaker of the House. That's important because the big 3 in Austin ultimately are the ones that have the final vote when it comes to incentives for some of these projects. So we also need to be over there and work in that particular process. We're circling back with Texas Workforce Commissioners Aaron Demerson and Brian Daniel, both of which have been in our community. Makes it a lot easier for us when we're working these particular projects, when they've come in and met our local leadership and met with the company as well. So again, just part of the process as far as tapping into funds, working it through the system. Looking at lead generation, KDC partnered with the Office of the Governor and Killdeer Mountain Manufacturing at the International Aerospace Conference, which is the largest in the world. That was last month. So we had a total of 13 meetings. Out of those 13, we've got 3 active projects. Now, I am going to say I was pretty impressed that Katie, who couldn't be here today, came back with 3 active projects. And I was like, well, that's not bad. Actually, that's not real bad because it's taken me 3 to 5 years to really work these conferences, as these shows, to really get something substantial. And she went and came back like that. So I was like, you still have much to learn, right? But so anyways, exciting to see how many of these projects are really materializing. Did get a note from the governor's staff thanking us, as well as Killdeer, because we helped them develop a couple of very good leads for them, one of which is international for them. And we participated in their meetings, as well as Office of the Governor. Since then, we've had 4 follow-ups. We've met virtually with 2 aerospace companies, one from Texas, another one from California, both in the very early stages, but definitely the position that we want to be in. And then we've got 2 other ones that we're following up, one this week and another one in 2 weeks, and those are international companies. And then lastly, along those lines with that show, we do have now a project Spacecraft, and that's Craft with a K. This is a manufacturer of space vehicle components. They are looking at doing business in Texas, specifically to support the growing commercial space sector here in the state. Still very preliminary for us, but again, that's exactly where I like to be in. Now in closing, the Venture Crawl. So this, we are, Business Innovation Forum, we've had that for a couple of years now, so we're now changing it. And coincidentally, we were asked, connecting the dots through the governor's office and through some of the other EDOs that we know here in the state, to be a part of, I think it's 12 cities that are going to be part of a statewide venture crawl, where they're going to be doing the first half of the day. You're you host, entrepreneurs in your community. You do, a couple of sessions. And then in the afternoon, everybody goes online from wherever you're hosting them. And they'll be doing business with other communities, with angel investors, and other entrepreneurs, and with venture capitalists in other communities. And these are the Houstons, the Austins, and the Dallases. We're in the mix. So it's a great opportunity for our local entrepreneurs to really go out there, spread their wings, and if they need help as far as guidance, looking for a mentor, even possibly funding, this is the place to be at. So it's going to be, at least for us, we're going to have 50 of our local small businesses and entrepreneurs, and it's going to be capped at that. So we're very excited about that. Kind of like a follow-up or an extension of the innovation forum that we've done in the past. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Is this report available in writing?
Absolutely, I could send it.
I've seen a report from you before, and it was in writing. It's easier to follow along if it's in writing.
I think that was last month
Indeed.
because we were not here. But yes, we could provide that. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'd like it for my files if it's convenient.
Sure thing.
Other questions? I know you'll be back up later, but on projects, just as a reminder, since we do have on a later agenda item for Mount Saddle and executive session, will you remind me and maybe anyone that hasn't heard this or needs a reminder like me, what are the jobs and clean industry export, just the very, very
Okay.
basics on that?
Good question. So, yeah, I went through it pretty quick. So it is a advanced manufacturer. This is a company out of Latin America. We're talking about a $35 million capital investment. It's a fairly sizable company. Originally they were looking at about 100 to 120,000 square foot facility.
And
Now
when
they're
you say $35 million capital investment, you mean on their part?
on their part, correct, yes. So that would be for both building and the equipment that they would be ordering for that facility. So again, when you start working with some of these industrial giants and advanced manufacturers, when we start talking about capital investment, the building portion is only like a small fraction of it, because everything's going into equipment, which is a good thing for the community as far as just economic impact and what have you. Unlike, not to take away from a warehousing or a logistics company, which does not really have that kind of equipment in there. So this is a great project. We're looking at about 60 jobs, direct jobs, and that would be over a 5-year period. So, we don't need to panic about, having a 400 or 500 person operation. This is a company that'll hire 15 jobs within the first year. They ramp up to 30 by year 3, and then 60 by year 5. So it allows us to really grow organically. They're looking at partnerships with other school institutions as well. And they are, because they are for indirect investment, and they would be sourcing a lot of local or regional raw materials, and this would be for export, the product. That really puts us in a great position as far as true economic development, which is a company that comes in, uses local raw materials, a local skill set, local people, and then you're selling it outbound, which means now somebody externally is paying you for that. So now you're importing dollars into the community. I like to use a hamburger stand example, which I have no problem with hamburger stands. I like hamburgers, but when you sell a hamburger locally, that money is just circulating here, right? You're not importing those dollars. This is a great example, and Kilder's another example of importing dollars into your community, and that's how you really start building wealth in the community and increasing the wages for, like you said it, Madam Chair, before, which are the people that are not in this room, really looking at increasing those wages. So, great project. It was sent to us by the Office of the Governor through our relationships. Connecting the dots again, it actually came from the Innovation Forum. We had somebody from the governor's, actually the whole governor's team was here, and one of them said, I think you need to talk to XYZ, because now that I toured your community, he was fairly new, I think there might be an opportunity as far as a project that we're working, and one thing led to another, and here we are today. That was back in October. Economic impact, am I divulging you too much, or is this okay?
No, go ahead.
Okay, it's about $58 million in economic impact that this company sets up here in Kerrville. Brand new investment, and they're tied to some pretty, they're tied to families that are listed in the both Fortune 500 and Forbes lists of influencers in North America. That puts us in a very unique club.
And as far as the product, it's clean industry.
It's clean industry, correct? So it's how can I describe this?
Just, that's probably,
Yeah, it's materials that are used in construction industry, clean. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. I mean, there's TCEQ's involved, but TCEQ even said like, yeah, they don't need much oversight.
Okay.
Gil, isn't your estimate that you're close to 300 total jobs, direct and indirect?
So this one is 60 jobs direct, and then and this is over a 5-year period. So indirect, we're talking about 130 plus, and then another, I can't remember, 80 plus or something induced. So the indirect jobs are kind of like the direct jobs are the ones provided by the company. The indirect, now we start talking about the ripple effect. The indirect are kind of like a logistics company or a company that provides mechanics to go service their machinery. Now they suddenly have to hire 1 or 2 people to work this particular company, to work this project. So that's an indirect job. Usually they're, at the very least decent paying jobs. And then the induced is if a Hobby Lobby or an Office Depot or an H-E-B says like, well, suddenly we have added, a business here or sales on a certain few items or a certain department within the store. So now they need to hire a couple of people for that. Those are the induced, where that ripple affects, and now you're starting to induce those jobs. Those typically tend to be in the service sector, retail or commercial. But again, it follows that chain as far as that one project having that huge ripple effect in that pond where everybody benefits.
I think that, as some of you know, I spent 35 years in the career field that Gil is in, and I've seen a lot of projects. And in my opinion, what Gil and his team have done is really remarkable with this project. And if they successfully bring it in for a landing, it's the sort of project that if you wrote the history of it, it could be used in seminars where they're teaching people economic development best practices. This one is just a beauty. It checks off every box in terms of very limited environmental consequence or cost, very high economic return and benefit. And as Gil was talking earlier, it's essentially exporting a manufactured product, which is the single highest way that you create wealth. When Gil was talking earlier about the hamburger stand, or hamburger example, in closed doors in his professional community, they refer to that kind of economics as taking in each other's laundry. It doesn't have much economic effect on the community, but this thing is just a great project. They've done a fabulous job. And I would add that they are competing with major cities all over the country for this sort of thing. And in the business that Gil is in, there's only one league. There's not a league for small cities and then a league for middle size and then for large size. There's only one playing field, one league, and Gil competes against Miami, Denver, all over the country, Austin, Dallas, and they're doing it with a very, very small team and a tight budget, and it's just, to me, really impressive.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gil.
All right?
All right, thank you.
Very good. 6B.
Good afternoon. It's nice to see everybody. Appreciate y'all taking the time today. Just a quick update on the current projects that haven't been completely paid out yet or paid out at all at this point. The airport improvements are mostly complete. I think there's still one or two punch list items on Mary's list, but we have paid out just about everything that we will pay out for EIC's involvement in that site work that is adjacent to the row hanger project that was also completed as a part of a larger TxDOT city-county project. Killdeer Mountain Manufacturing is going through the process of inspections, so they're on track. Looks like we're going to have, hopefully we'll have some dates for ribbon cuttings and all the rest of that pretty soon. Gil's been in talks with them on setting that up, so just want to make sure all their T's are crossed and I's are dotted before we get to that point, but it looks like it's going really, really well. So excited about that one. Peterson Regional, if you've been out there and you don't work there, you can see a lot of the progress and you're excited. If you work there, you're parking kind of anywhere you can at this point. The engineering staff has been working with them on getting closer to substantial completion. So if y'all remember, or for those of you that weren't here before, this is a two-pronged payout from EIC. It's $800,000 upon substantial completion of the infrastructure for the offsite infrastructure, and the second portion would be upon substantial completion of the surgical center. So they're working their way. That building's going up quickly. So it's a neat project, and I can imagine that all the staff is going to be excited when they no longer have to park on that road. Louise Hayes Park Fitness Court, got an update from Parks and Rec yesterday that they should be working on the mobilization and have it all done, I hope, August 3rd and 4th. So I don't know how long it takes, but I think they were assuming that it was going to be within those 2 days that they would get it all installed and complete. So I hold out my hope for a 2-day installation, so I would say mid-August, but for now, it's scheduled to start August 3rd.
It's 4th through mid-August.
Will they get rained out?
Before they get rain, yes, yeah, right. Hopefully, I'll take the rain out. I'll take it all day.
I'm hoping they get rained out.
Need an over and under on that one.
The downtown area streetscapes, K-Pub and their contractors are working through their process still. So once they're completed that, we should be able to come in behind them with the streetscape portion of our project, pretty much immediately behind that. I would expect mid-August to early September for that. Downtown River Trail Extension, there are 5 easements that we're working through, finalizing in discussions. So there's been some back and forth with the owners, and I think we've gotten to a point where we're just about ready. Everybody's requests have been pretty reasonable. And so we should be moving forward with that one. Excited about that as well. So John Hewitt has just about everything on his end done, waiting this last piece. So we've been working with Malcolm, previous Parks and Rec director, and he decided to take a step back, and so we at staff are kind of stepping in. We're going to finalize that process with the building owners. So
you're saying that once that last easement acquisition has been agreed upon, it's going to be ready to go? Is that what I'm?
yeah, I mean, we've got a few pieces left on staging areas from some of the landowners, because, you know, as you can imagine, pouring concrete down to the river from up above, we'll need a few places to kind of stage. So we're asking some of that of the landowners. So we're still negotiating some of that to limit the cost. The closer we can be to it, the more inexpensive it's going to be. If we've got to bring things from
I mean, the more affordable.
more affordable. Did I say expensive? I meant inexpensive, sorry. If we've got to bring everything from the other side of the park and kind of trolley it in across the Tranquility Island, we want to limit that as much as we can. So good discussions going on. Last one is Nimitz Lake. Mr. Hewitt is complete with his study on that, and so next month he's going to bring that in and go over the phasing of the project and his analysis of probable cost opinion on that one. And with that, I will turn it back over for any questions from you.
Questions?
All right.
You're up first. 6C, monthly financial report. Trina?
Good afternoon, everyone. Full house today. All right, so we're going over June financials. All right, here on your first slide, statement of activities. And we're looking at the current period and columns to the right. So we had June sales tax come in at $380,000 for the month, and that was for April sales. This is a 6% decrease compared to June of '22, but we found that manufacturing was down close to 16%, retail trade was down 7%, and then we had a payer who didn't make it in time to remit for the month, so that payment didn't come in. So year-to-date collected is $3,746,000, and based on budget, we wanted you at $3,750,000, so you're a little shy of about $3,400. That's okay. July sales tax came in the other day. It was $445,000. That was a 10% increase over July of last year. The preliminary report shows that there was a $55,000 future period payment, and of course the late payer came in also, so we just have all the little things to work out. But we'll get our analysis next week or two, so we can look at that, the report. Let's see, interest revenue for the month of June earned $31,000, $24,900 in your pools, and $6,300 in your short-term investments. So year-to-date, $219,000. And down to the expenditures, just City of Kerrville Administrative Services, your monthly debt transfer, and then, yes, we paid out the airport box hanger site work project, $73,000. I think we have $19,000 left in that project, so we'll get a few little lingering invoices coming through. So that leaves you year-to-date net position, $231,000. I'm sorry, for the month net position, $231,000. All right, on to your cash flow. And your first column there, bottom of the row shows, or the bottom row shows your ending cash balance at $5,939,000. And your next column to the right is your last quarter of fiscal year '23, the estimations. So if we pay out those projects, we think we're going to start picking up here on these projects this last little quarter of the year. You have an investment that matures in August, $500,000. We do plan to reinvest that as long as things stay great in the market. And then your last four columns there to the right are your fiscal year '24 projections by quarter. Okay, your financial analysis, last slide here. Your sales tax comparisons. So we've been sitting on our seat every month, but as you can see, it's trending along. We're at a 6.5% average overall for the year, so we're right at our budget expectation. Cash and investments are to the right. Your tax pool average yield for the month was 5.3%. And then your short-term investments are 5.28%. So those are neck and neck with each other. And then you have your project balances there at the bottom. Any questions on June financials?
Questions?
No.
Nope.
Thank you.
I wanted to bring to your attention the 10-year cash flow analysis that y'all have in front of you. So I know that's something that the board had wanted to see. I think it's a kind of an easier way to be able to look at, you know, what your available cash is, and your bandwidth for projects as we move forward, both from a cash flow standpoint and if there was some long-term considerations as well. Now, I think one of the nice things to see about this is that there will be some bandwidth to work on projects, and I want to bring these to you as, you know, as these projects are coming before us.
Like the project.
What you can withstand, and, you know, yeah, exactly. And as we're looking at tranches in the agreements as they go out, plugging those in so you can see what that cash flow will look like over the years. So I know one of the concerns is always, you know, well, what if we need this big, you know, tranche? And so we'll be able to see exactly what that will look, well, not exactly, presumably what that will look like, you know. And we've taken a conservative approach of that and used a 1% sales tax growth over time. So really not trying to be as conservative as we can with that outlook.
This will be adjusted based on actuals and based on potential, so we can see the cash flow analysis.
Yes, yeah. So I know last meeting you'd made the request that the EIC and KEDC and maybe the city council get together and discuss kind of quality of life projects or visions. And so, meeting with the board chairs for the council and EIC to discuss some times for you all to accomplish that. And I think it'd be a nice, segue, so y'all can all take a look at this, see what the council's priorities are, discuss what EIC's, wishes are for the use of all this, and everybody have a good discussion with that. And then, yes, this will, once the actuals get put in place, they're there, but then it can also forecast if y'all wanted to do project A, B, C, this is a 3-year project, this is a 2-year project, this maybe is an ongoing project, what that would look like for your cash flow now for this board and future boards, so.
Yeah, I like this a lot, Michael, and again, I think what Kim was saying is, for me, for this to be really effective, as we do funding agreements,
Update.
so we can see this on, I'd like to see it, I don't know how much of a job it is to put together, but if we could have it monthly, I think this is critical. It gives us a much better snapshot of today and 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road.
Well, I gotta thank Julie and Trina, they're just phenomenal with all the things that they do. So in the midst of all the stuff we're doing here, we can certainly do that.
This is very helpful.
Mr. Copper, this is pretty much built off of your monthly one as we use it, just with a little extra. So if you see the little yellow highlighted line there, we did include some future projects, just numbers,
Sure,
whatever they end up being.
Just plugs.
Just to see that adjusted cash balance if we were to take on something like that in those years or whatnot.
But just knowing some of the things that may be coming to us that are relatively substantial, that's gonna change this picture fairly dramatically. And so I think as current as we can keep on that, it's really gonna be very, very helpful. Thank you so much.
And those for you who are visual, this here is a graphical representation of that cash flow also. So that gray gap there between your expenditures, all the colorful columns, and then your revenue and cash line at the top, that's going to be your capacity there in the middle, which you can afford. So that's something to take into consideration when you're looking at funding options and different ideas. We did take it one step further and do a little bit of research and reach out to our financial advisors about possibility of revenue bonds. That is an option also for funding. So we were looking into sales tax revenue bonds just to see what it means with sales tax dollars. So with the sales tax dollars, you would have to do a gross revenue pledge, just meaning if you were to take on debt to pay for something, that new debt service would have to be paid first, and then you can go forward with your operations and maintenance, and then your already self-supporting debt, and then any new PAYGO projects that come up that you want to consider. So that would just be the line of priority. Also, with sales tax revenue bonds, you have to.
I'm sorry, could
I'm sorry.
you explain what a sales tax revenue bond is?
Yes, ma'am. Well, so your main revenue source is the sales tax dollars. So that would be what we are using to pay the debt service.
Oh, okay.
And that's just pretty much it.
So you're investing in the bond and then you use the bond money to pay off
We
the
would,
debt?
we would sell these
We
bonds.
sell, yes.
Oh, sell these bonds?
Yeah. It's a debt, it's a way to borrow money, basically, to raise funds.
Okay,
That it's just like if you look on our financial statement now, we have 3 debt services that we pay on a monthly basis,
Right.
about $90,000, give or take. And so this would be potentially adding to that. The reason we've done it in the past, I think, if my understanding is, we have a large project that comes up. We don't have, or don't want to spend all of our cash. We can stretch that payment out and use our income stream to pay for it over a long period of time.
okay. Right, thank you.
So if we
Thank
did
you,
a
Mr. Parker.
new bond issuance, we wouldn't have to refinance the existing bond debt that we have. We could just do this in addition to, and I assume the rates are a lot higher now than when we got the original.
You are correct. Yes, you can do in addition to, because they're already taking the existing debt service into consideration of what you have capacity for. And yes, interest rates are higher. I think some of the old stuff is 2% range.
So any idea what the current rates are? I'm sure this is a tax-free. So hopefully better than.
I want to say she threw out their things are about 4.5% right now, and that's with a 50 basis point push, so maybe 4% is what we're looking at, like right now. It just depends on when you close on a deal, what the market's doing. A caveat to that is you have to have a reserve fund. It's required. That's just a year's worth of debt service you set aside. It would go into a restricted general ledger account, and you're allowed to invest that money while it's sitting there. You can use the earnings to pay back debt service also. So that's a good thing.
So our existing debt has that same requirement?
No, it does not. Those are certificates of obligation,
So
and they have a different,
COs.
different covenant.
Okay.
And then one last thing she shared with us was that there's a tax law requirement in which if you were to issue debt, 95% of the proceeds had to be spent within 3-year time frame on these projects you're issuing for. So there's different ways that you can work your deal to, if you're, just depending on how much you're going to issue. If you were not able to spend that, maybe you could break it out into a couple of series, not get it all at once, but you would have to meet that threshold, that timeline for those projects. This is nothing set in stone. We're just looking out, reaching out for information, and just want to put that out there for y'all that that is an option also as you come along with these new projects.
Helpful.
If y'all remember, the mayor explained the council's priorities for this current year. So I can expect that we'll want to have that workshop that we discussed, probably within the next month, just to look at what this body and council may or may not want to look at as far as any debt service that this body would consider.
That's correct. I think the hope is to have that sometime within the next month, have a joint meeting, have some KEDC staff there, maybe even some KEDC board members that are not members of y'all's body, I don't know, just as far as the discussion topic goes.
And to be clear, this would be a decision made by this body, and then if this decision was made by this body, then it goes to council for final approval.
Yeah, I
This
think,
doesn't come from one, or if this body wants to do that in the future, what is the process?
I think that's part of the discussion is whether or not EIC would want to consider those things. I think part of it is, you all are the funding source for a lot of these projects, and you've got skin in this game, and I think it's important for you both to sit down and discuss those quality of life projects and what's important. They are quality of life. We get those directives from council, but there's a lot of projects out there, and there's a lot of ways to fund them too. So, there is a cash component, which we do a lot, and there's a limitation to how many projects you can do on a cash basis in a given year. And so, part of the thinking that we've looked at is what would those debt services be on some of these quality of life projects, because they would exceed what, if we did them just one-offs. But we didn't want to be presumptive either.
Sure. So another question is, because these are sales tax revenue bonds, which we've never done, I don't think EIC has done that in the past. We've done COs.
Yeah.
And the reasoning behind that is?
COs are backed by property tax, just in the instance.
So it
you
affects
were not-
y'all's bonding capacity, the city's bonding capacity if we go COs.
Correct.
And sales tax does not affect that's kind of what I was getting to. I made that assumption, but.
That's the short answer for it, yes, sir.
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
Okay.
And yes, if this body was to agree to issue debt, yes, it would have to be approved through council. We answered that.
I think one of the real kickers on that is the 3 years.
Yes.
Yeah, so I
You did it
think,
in series, like she suggested.
You just have to really look at it and see. We don't need to spend a lot of time on that today.
yeah, and if we move forward with that discussion, we'll have bond counsel available to kind of flesh out all
Yeah,
that.
this is just so whenever you see an upcoming workshop, just to give you an idea of the topics that may be discussed as far as projects. But again, also that this body will, determine whether this is the route that we want to go in the future. So this is just the opening to that conversation.
That's- yep.
Other questions?
Alrighty.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Trina. We have a public hearing, item 7. Do you read that in, or shall I read that in, or do we need to read? I'll read that in, okay? Item 7A, Economic Development Grant Agreement between the City of Kerrville, Texas Economic Improvement Corporation and Lennar Homes of Texas Land and Construction LTD for regional infrastructure. Do we have a staff presentation?
Yes, ma'am, we do.
Okay.
And for those of y'all that don't know, I wanted to introduce Clifton Karam. He is with Lennar Homes. He's been the gentleman that we've been working with on this process, and was also who we were dealing with when we did Ridgeland as well. So Clifton's not new to Kerrville, and been very kind, very patient as we work through kind of all of our processes. And I'd like to think he would think the same of us as we've been working through our due diligence here.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll run through the generalities of the project. So this would be the second phase of Lennar's product here in town. So as y'all know, we have currently 130 platted homes in the Ridgeland project, and there's 18 building permits that are out there right now. And as you drive by, you see the sticks going up. So they're making progress. And so as they go through this first phase of it, they have indicated a desire to come back and do a second phase. And so it's been to planning and zoning for their consideration. And it's a planned development district that was approved by P&Z. And the next phase of it will go to City Council. There's a first and a second reading for annexation in a planned development district. The initial iteration had 25, 35, and 45-foot lots. After discussion with City Council and P&Z and the developer, the plan has been modified, so 25-foot lots are not going to be a part of the development. There'll be a mixture of 35 and 45-foot wide lots in there. So I will jump right in. This is the piece of property. This is currently, they're not going to take in the entirety of it. There's going to be three different components to it. There'll be a commercial component, a residential component, and then there's going to be a part, because of the topography of the land at the back end of it, that will be vacant ag land into the future. So I just said previous iteration here because if you notice, right around these are the collector phases of the project. So the green one being the first phase and the blue or purple one being the second phase of the road construction, the major road construction. This had in that center portion those 25-foot lots in there. So I just wanted to highlight that those are not going to be part of it. Now here is the layout. It hasn't changed substantially other than in that center area where there were 25-foot lots, you now see 35-foot lots. This is proposed to be 511 homes in 4 phases. Clifton, is that 4 or, well, there's 4 phases, but there's an A and a B phase in a couple of these. So Clifton will be here to answer some of your questions as we get into it. The blue section you see there is going to be commercial, and that is 25 acres in that big section and just under 4 acres in that section that's just on the bottom. The yellow areas that you see there are going to be stormwater and detention basins throughout the development. And then that area in the back with the green highlight around it, that's the entirety of the property, but that's 100 acres that is not going to be a part of Lennar's development. That's just going to be future ag land to be considered at some other time. Not necessarily by Lennar, but that's just going to be vacant land for now. Ready? Okay, so within the scope of the agreement, the ask is it's $5 million, and so the first portion of that would be upon substantial completion of the regional infrastructure, so the water and sewer, the road, and the detention. And that would be $2 million upon substantial completion of that. I will say that we are still discussing between Lennar and the staff some of the components in the agreement. So what we have in the current iteration is for the second tranches of money, which are $750,000 per year upon completion of 100 homes, and then 200 homes, and then 300 homes, and then 400 homes. Lennar came back to us and said, you know, reasonably, we can complete 62 homes, I think is the number that we had discussed. So we're still negotiating some of those points. So we don't want to put them in a position to fail, not be able to accomplish that goal. And so we're going to come back to you all, provided we move forward with it, with the finer detail points within the agreement, because I think a few of those things would change, like that section where it's 100 homes, maybe down to 62 homes.
So what would we be approving today, then, if we're expected to have you guys come back?
I think it's moving forward. It would be moving forward with the agreement of the consideration for $5 million for the regional infrastructure. I think the particulars of how many homes per year that are within the confines of that agreement would be the subject of the consideration. So
That's the only main deal point that we're considering.
So their attorney's office are still looking through a few of it. They're still looking through the document, so I can't say that it won't have any other requests for change, but any substantial requests will come back to the body. But at this point, the biggest one for me is that I don't want to have them have to come back for 100 homes, and they were only able to complete 62 of those.
Michael, are there any parameters on the price point of the homes?
So we have it set up there in as eligible dwelling units that fall within the confines of that 80 to 120 AMI, which at this point is $275,000.
And that's at the 120?
That's at the 120, yeah. And so that's HUD's number for 120% of the AMI, which still astounds me. The Ridgeland agreement that was drafted several years ago, the 120 was $227,000. So between then and now, that number has gone $50,000 up. So to me, it's just, it is what it is. But yes, that's that number. So to fall within
Any
that range.
clawbacks to the initial $2 million investment if there's not homes delivered to a certain extent?
We can certainly have that placed in there. What we had in the Ridgeland agreement was the property was placed into escrow, or the value of the property was placed into an account. And had they not provided the deliverables on that, that money would have gone to the city for that agreement. But we can certainly put measures in place similar to that. All right. And so the concerns about the 25-foot lots were relayed. Now we have those iterations at 35 and 45. Their engineers and their planners have had to update those layouts, and this was in between when we called the public hearing and today. And so they're still working through those estimates. What you have in your packet, though, are estimates for the regional infrastructure that are $6.7 million as of 2021, August. So for those of you that are in the business of doing construction or buying pipe, those numbers have not gone down since then, they've gone up. So that has been the ask since Lennar has started this process from EIC. So that number hasn't changed. And I have several of these. I didn't want to highlight all of them, but I just wanted to showcase the products that they would be offering. So this is part of the Watermill collection, which is the collection that they're offering at Ridgeland currently. And so these are different versions of these layouts. So we have requested, or we have in the agreements that they'll have either 2-car garages or spaces in the driveways that would accommodate at least 2 standard size cars. Mr. Mr. Karam can certainly speak to the product that they're gonna be looking at putting out there, more in depth than I can. But I just wanted to showcase, some of the products that they're gonna be offering out there. And with that, Madam Chair, I will turn it back over to you all. This is an item that is eligible for executive session discussion. I imagine as we're discussing finer points that y'all will want to go into executive session and discuss this before you make a determination, but just wanted to highlight that. And with that, I will turn it back over.
Okay, so I'd like to ask each of you if you have any questions, and then I'll open up for public hearing. Following the public hearing, if you have any other items that you want to discuss, we can do it that way as well. But before I open for public hearing, do any of you have questions you want to ask Michael or the developer?
Mix of 1-story and 2-story homes?
Hi. So we predominantly build single-story homes. I know that it has been something that Michael and I have talked about several times as far as incorporating a larger number of 2-stories. That was one of the reasons we had that 25-foot wide home site component to the last land plan, was because that product line is all 2 stories. With these 35s and 45s, that number of 2 stories is going to go down probably to about 20% of our offering. So I know it's not as high as Michael would like to see it, but that's what the homes that we build, and we believe that they're catered to the market, that people predominantly want to live in a 1-story home. And then I wanted to touch on Michael's point also about the homes, the number of homes being built. We've had this conversation going on for a long time as far as getting EIC involved in a grant that would pay for some of the regional infrastructure with Windridge. It's actually Windridge has a D in it. I know the opening slide I was missing the D, but this conversation's been going on for about 3 years. But just recently, I mean, in that 3 years, a lot has happened in the last 3 years. Recently, there's been a lot more activity, lots of things coming together, the PDD, getting feedback from staff and Planning and Zoning Commission and council. And so it's morphed a lot in the last, I would say 30 days. Things have really started to come together. And so all these things from Lennar's vantage points are hinged on each other. The component with the city development agreement that is now morphing into more of a TERS type agreement, the grant from EIC, the PDD, and so all that helps us build out our own projections for the project. And so it has been a bit of a moving target, and so for that lack of detail, I apologize. But what I want to articulate what I told Michael was that the interim steps to hit need to be tied to the market. We can agree all day long on how many homes we're going to build, but at some point we're going to stop building homes if we aren't selling them. So how that all works out, potential clawback if we go build the road and then we decide to go, off the grid and build, more expensive homes than would be allowed under the agreement. We can work through those details. They have not been talked about. Our attorneys are still reviewing. I haven't gotten feedback from our attorneys, our internal counsel. But definitely wanted to take the opportunity today to present the idea. It's something we're very excited about. Ridgeland should open for sales here in about 30 days. Very excited to get that going, and hopefully Windridge will be the continuation of Lennar's presence here in Kerrville. So, long answer to your question.
So I know you guys are really uniquely able to deliver new homes in this price point. You do that in a lot of different ways, but are you finding opportunities at all to utilize any local vendors or subcontractors or suppliers of any kind, or are you pretty much bringing all that in from outside?
Oh man, I should have a good answer for that. And when I was just talking about that with our purchasing manager the other day, I'm trying to remember exactly what he said. The answer is some, not all. Some have been local, and there were certain trades, and gosh dog, I can't remember what they were. I can follow up with you on that. There were certain trades that we had more luck finding locally, and there were certain trades that were coming from San Antonio.
What is the current range of the pricing of the house? What fits in within that 80 to 120? Kind of just generally.
The 8120, so about 200 to 260 is what we're looking at right now. It has gone up quite a bit, as Michael had said, about $50,000. Unfortunately, our costs have gone up by just about the same amount. So But that's what we're targeting, and we do, we pride ourselves on delivering homes to entry-level home buyers. I mean, most of our customers are first-time home buyers, young families, and so that's who we really cater to. We have a big machine, and that allows us to get economies of scale. You know, we only build you know, homes inventory. We don't sell dirt. We sell inventory homes, so we get kind of a conveyor belt system. Not a lot of customization to our homes. We take the best and the most sought after spec levels and features of homes, and we offer them at a lower price because we buy with economies of scale. So that's really our program there, is this kind of conveyor belt system, entry-level home buyers, and because of that, we are able to get our prices lower than our competition. Yeah, sure.
Okay. At 5 o'clock, I'll open the public hearing. I understand we do have speakers signed up.
Hi, Barbara Ferguson. I live here in Kerrville. I had a couple of questions and comments regarding this development. First of all, the contract that was up for action today, the way I understood it, it was either going to be signed off on that you're going to implement this agreement or not. And it sounds like there are a lot of unknowns right now, and that perhaps it's premature to make any such action today. But as of 3 o'clock, the county does not show that Lennar is the owner of the property. The contract or the agreement states that Lennar is the owner. Schreiner University is still the owner. And that would all be dependent, I imagine, is on whether the city annexes the property or not, as to whether Schreiner is able to sell the property to Lennar. So, again, it appears that we've got the cart before the horse. And furthermore, I'm not sure that the EIC can enter into an agreement with a property outside the Kerrville city limits. So again, I think we need to wait until this is sold, until we've got an actual agreement that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed on, as far as how many homes have we got, are we going to put in there, how many 2 stories. Currently, the agreement says 40% are going to be 2 stories. Then in addition, I'd like to, in taking a look at the plat map, it said it's to cater to young families, and I agree. These are entry-level homes, and that's who's going to need to buy them. It's going to be young families. But what I see on this plat map is no space for children. The offsets in the front are 15 feet. They have a 15-foot offset in the backyard. There's a 5-foot sidewalk on each side, and I would wonder, does that 5-foot sidewalk cut into that 15-foot, or is that in addition? Currently, this also calls the 15-foot front setback is smaller than what the city requires. They require a 19-foot to a garage door. You put a car in front of a garage outside on the driveway. If you've only got 15 feet there, that car is going to be sitting in the sidewalk. Young families need sidewalks that are accessible. I can just see little kids running in and out around the cars on these streets. There needs to be green space in here. We can do better for our young families in Kerrville than this. We need to have some parkland set aside in there within the development for young families. And I think Lennar can do better for young families than this. I called Lennar Homes today about the other development and asked them what their timeline was. And their salespeople told me it'd be at least 3 months before any home under that current development would be available for sale. I think we need to hold off, take a look at how the current development transpires, how the sales go, what the feedback is. We've got a perfect opportunity here. We're doing a trial run. I don't think we need to put all our eggs in one basket and find that maybe the basket wasn't really what fit Kerrville. And I'd just like you to consider that very carefully. And also, besides those details, again, get back to the fact that this isn't an agreement that can be voted on today. It's not complete. Thank you.
Keisha?
Peggy McKay?
Peggy McKay, Kerrville. Barbara took, she must have been reading my mind. And it's difficult to, with the changes, with what I've written down, but I'm going to go with the original. And then I realize you've made the changes. One thing I wondered about on the commercial property there, since the EIC is working with infrastructure, as other businesses tie on to the infrastructure in that commercial area, or even close by, will they have to pay Lennar to tie on to that system or not? Well, the number of units again have changed, so I can't even say anything about that, except that I have a problem with so many large developments in smaller areas, like what was about to happen to Highway 16 South. Now we've got it on the loop, and as that develops more, and if the industrial park is using 534 for transportation to connect to the interstate, it's going to be a log jam. I don't see anything where we have done traffic flow reports and studies. And the south side of town is terrible. And one other thing we don't have, we still don't have a fire station south of the river. If we add, well, the original 500 units, that's like 1,000 cars, at least. Also, the studies to date on the traffic flow have only considered within the development, not the effects on the rest of the city. And I'd like to see that the traffic flow studies be expanded. And this will be the third project, large project, where the land is completely leveled. All the trees are gone, and so far I'm not seeing replacement trees, specifically that significant category. Also, there's no mention of the 2050 plan and its compliance. And one of the big things in the 2050 plan was the beauty of Kerrville, the natural beauty, the open areas, and this is crowding people into a small space. And people don't do well when they're really crowded together. I don't see that as being successful. I would prefer to see the workforce housing on a smaller scale throughout the city. And that also could help with the jobs, the schools, the traffic flow. They mentioned the setbacks, so that's already gone. But one thing I don't want to see us, Kerrville, I don't think the citizens want to see the box city that is on the east side of 10 between Bernie and San Antonio. All you see is a box, and people talk about the beauty of Kerrville. They're not going to be referring to a box type structure. I would like to also, as Barbara mentioned, slow down, catch up to ourselves. Do the first part of the Lennar development. See how it's accepted by the city. Is it what the city wants? It is. I know we need the housing, but is this type what the city wants?
Thank you, Mrs. McKay. That's your time.
I thank you for the time, but I will leave and tell you one thing that an HEB executive cautioned. When you move too fast, you sometimes sacrifice quality, and we don't want to do that.
Thank you, Mrs. McKay.
Thank you.
George Baruti?
George Baruti, 1616 Glen Road. So first couple of things are just sort of housekeeping in the the agreement that you guys were given. There's actually a mistake in its reference. It references two codes that you're utilizing to approve this, and one of them is 501-103, which you are, but 505-154 is not the right one. It's 505-153, which references housing. And this is actually not an economic development thing, it's a housing project. And it's a contract, I mean, you can look in, there are no clawbacks, you were asking about that. The only thing that is stipulated to is the number of homes being built. And so this is all infrastructure to develop within there. And you see that blue part is the commercial part. None of the infrastructure that's being paid for with this grant is really servicing that commercial area. It's just those houses. And in that 505-153, it's very specific on the type of housing you're allowed to approve in this body. And it's not 80% to 120%, it's actually up to 80%. So there's a mismatch between what you're referencing and what you're actually providing. So you probably need to check that before you get any further. The other thing that it requires in that housing code is that each home has an initial price that does not exceed 95% of the median purchase price in the area. I'm guessing these will do that. Is the principal residence of an owner whose family qualifies as a low-income family. That's where it comes into play. You go look at what this code is referencing, and a low-income family is defined as someone with a household income 80% or less of the area median. It also talks about the requirement to have regulations in place that create a perpetual affordability to these homes. The way they put it, it's subject to resale restrictions that are established by their participating jurisdiction, which would be the city, that allow for subsequent purchase of the property only by persons who meet the qualifications specified under the paragraph 2, which is low-income families. So we're not providing that in the details of this contract. I don't believe you can even approve it under this guise. And then to probably my last point, but basically it appears they're buying this whole property. They can't use half of it, okay? So what we're essentially doing is subsidizing that sale. So we're really just granting half of this, because they could have gotten a reduced price of the land or bought half of it, because they don't need that back half. They're buying garbage land at a premium price, and the public is going to subsidize that sale. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So anyways, I would urge you to sort of reconsider this as a project at all, at least under this, and really look at what you're allowed to approve. The city can approve a deal like this, but EIC cannot. So you could actually, if you wanted to, set aside money. You don't have to spend the money that's in your coffers. You could set aside money and give it back to the general fund. You are actually allowed to do that if you wanted to do this. Otherwise, as you do it right now, you're doing it in violation of your own codes. So, thanks.
Pablo Brinkman?
Pablo Brinkman, 3928 Oak Park Drive. I got a lot of things to talk about, I guess. Let's start with the last with George. So George, most of what you said was incorrect as far as acreage, as far as commercial, things like that. I represent Schreiner University on this is why I'm here. And even if I didn't represent Schreiner, I'd be here probably saying as much as I'm going to. The commercial is not part of what we're here about. The commercial is a standalone. The commercial will come and our firm will market it once Lennar has taken this down. George, the acreage that you see that you refer to garbage acreage, I don't think there's any garbage acreage in all of Kentucky right now. It's all very valuable. So the agriculture that we're going to leave in, the 100 plus acres, is for future development. If you were here at P&Z, you would have known that because we had a question, when was that going to be developed? And I was misquoted in the paper that it could take 5 to 10 years for Lennar. It could take 5 to 10 years. We don't know what that's going to be. The Lennar tract was negotiated in 3 different takedowns. We had one that wrapped around the high school that is not part of this and will not be. We have 2 different phases that are taken down. As far as timing and allowances that the young lady brought up and things like that, I would say that there's a lot of things that have to happen, EIC being one of them. P&Z was the first, EIC part of it in this PD. Then you go to council, 2 readings. So there's a lot of things. Everybody keeps talking about slowing down. We've worked on this project. My firm's worked on it for over 2 years to get to this point. I will tell you that Lennar is pretty savvy. They're not going to build homes in Kerrville if they don't need to build homes in Kerrville. So right now, I have a few people that asked me to say a few things. Corey Edmondson asked me, he couldn't be here, that he is in favor of this, anything that he can do for the hospital, Peterson Hospital, to bring affordable housing. And we're talking about affordable housing. The past EIC president, Greg Richards, he was also unable to be here. He had a scheduled conflict. He said, please listen to the very last thing he said when he got his certificate from Mayor Eichner of appreciation, is we must have affordable housing. So there's a lot of things that were said about this, as all things are. We have had multiple times where developers have come and they've all left. They've all left. Let's don't talk about affordable housing. Let's don't say we want to grow Kerrville. Let's don't say we even want to help Kerrville with the existing housing. We could have a lot of statistics for people that are just here right now. Ms. McKay, you talked about, the type of people that this is built for. I can tell you, it's too bad. I was thinking I should have asked the many people that have contacted our firm about the 25 wide homes. We had 3 different people call us that Thursday night after P&Z, and then we had throughout the weekend. So there is people here. Lennar's not going to build something and not going to spend money and not going to go through this just because they did it. They're going to do it if the need is there. So, it comes back to the project we've had from Vintage Heights to Keeble's property. We always find a way to not let it work. We always find a way to not let it work. And I know it's scary, but I don't think anybody here is a candidate for one of those homes. But I was thinking, I wish I would have asked those people to come here, because those people are needing this house, are needing these houses for this price point. Thank you all.
Thank you.
We have no other signed.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone else want to speak to the matter? Okay.
My name's Maggie McGee. I live at 2729 Indian Wells in Kerrville. And I used to serve on this esteemed body for 4 years and on the board of the KEDC for 4 years. I've known about this project since the beginning. I think it's wonderful. I think it's needed. It might need a little tweaking around the edges, but we need this housing and we need it now. I have heard from every major company. I have heard from the hospital, both the state and Peterson. I have heard from just about every business, small and large, in the city, that we must have affordable workforce housing. I think you ought to consider it. I think it's a great project. Lennar is known throughout the country for building these kind of communities, and the people that live in them love them. So that's all I got to say.
Someone else?
Madam Clarkson, Commissioners. I like this project. I like the 25 wide lots. I don't like the layout, but I like what they're trying to do. I think at the P&Z was closer to 700 homes, and I like that. We need the homes. I don't like really the way they're doing it, but I don't like the way my wife does everything either. And I do think we can make it better. I think if we look at the 2050 plan and the high-density projects that we showed in that plan to the city, that the citizens are very much behind, that provides for a better product that can be done in this market. And I think we need to be somewhere closer to that, but that's for the P&Z and the City Council. That's not what we're talking about tonight. We are talking tonight about the monies. And I struggled as I read through the agreement, and apparently it's not the right agreement, so maybe I wasted my time, but getting to the regional infrastructure, I don't see the regional infrastructure that we're needing to support, because George is right. The vast majority of this infrastructure supports what this development is doing. And I am curious about how the other 100 acres is going to get developed. The gentleman from Lennar said it's too steep and they're just going to leave it agricultural. Mr. Brinkman says it's going to be developed. I expect it will be developed. I expect it will be developed by Lennar. And so I don't see that we're doing regional infrastructure that's being extended into the city. This isn't on the edge of the city. This is a donut hole we're filling. And so it's not going to extend over and provide more infrastructure to other adjacent properties. It's all going to be focused right here in this 200 acres. And so I'm really struggling with why we're giving $2 million to regional infrastructure. And then in addition to that, I really think, Greg, you nailed it. It's got to be tied to the house prices. It can't be a $2 million gift and then we don't do anything because of the market. We can't actually build and sell the houses, but we got our $2 million. Or we don't end up selling those houses for that and we're out that $2 million. I think 5 million is too much. Usually we talk about $10,000 a door. As we've gone through these projects in the past, this one's closer to 14,000 a door. And I did 510 because I'm not sure what the number is, but so it seems to me we're putting too much money toward this. It's not really guaranteeing the product that we're after and the reason we're even talking about this, because otherwise we'd be doing a 380 agreement or something, right? And so I like this project. I want to see this project 25 foot wide, 35 foot wide, 45 foot wide lots. Doesn't bother me. I'd like to see it in a better way that would be more consistent with the 2050 plan. And I think that would actually bring greater value to not only the homeowners, but to the city of Kerrville. But we need the housing. And we definitely need multifamily even more than we need this. Thank you all. Appreciate your service.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to close the public hearing at 5:22. What I'd like to do is ask if there are any questions and suggest that since this is eligible for executive session, technical and legal questions for our city attorney can be asked through executive session. But any general questions for clarification that you would like to ask now while we have full staff, developer here. Celeste, I'll start with you. Do you have any questions you want to ask at this time?
No.
I think mine will be mostly the legal.
Okay. All right. So at this time, what I'd like to do is move on to our next agenda item. And then after executive session, come back, or we can go into executive session now if you want to entertain moving that executive session up on the items and come back and do the consideration and possible action after that. So what is your pleasure?
Why don't we just let Gil do his presentation?
Okay. Oh, yes, that would be nice. Yes, I think that's a good idea, Caio. I agree. All right, very good. All right. So we're on moving to item 8A, EIC proposed budget. Would y'all be okay if we did move KEDC before EIC? So that Gil could go to his other place besides the city hall? Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Okay, you want to go ahead?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. All right, so before I get into the actual budget, I'm going to go through just I think maybe 4 slides. Touch a little bit on the strategic plan and some of the deliverables for the year. This is nice. So About a year ago, we hosted a retreat, and that was for our actually 5 stakeholder groups. So we had 25 of 32 individual members that attended that, and that's from the city council, county commissioners, the EIC was there as well, KPUB, and then the appointed board of directors for the KDC as well. And as you can see right there in that slide, it's they are the stakeholders that pay into the KEDC, so it's 11% for the city, the county, KPUB, and then 66% for the EIC. So from that, we're drawing from the 2050 plans. We have 4 identified action areas or goal areas. So we had some pretty meaningful discussions. The first one was just basically marketing, promoting to position the community for inbound investment, leveraging some of the assets that we already have in place, and then the existing workforce, looking at some potential and some opportunities there, basically making sure that there's no stone unturned there with our low unemployment rate, and then the power of convening. So everything, again, was done through the lens of talent and local skill set. So basically, we can't go out there and recruit a company of 400, 500, 600 employees when there's a need for other companies locally here. So from that, we found our niche, which was between 40 to 60 employee person operations, more along the lines of aerospace and advanced manufacturing. So those goals or action areas on the marketing and branding, these are some examples. Editorial placement. So that's something that we've been doing here in the last year, really last couple of years. So we've had some articles printed in the Austin and the San Antonio business journals. So basically what we do is we really don't advertise. We don't put our money into advertising, but we'll talk or pitch Kerrville to reporters in some of these publications. So in turn that they can print a proactive business article. Now, there is no such thing as persuading them or getting them to print something because this is the media and it's independent. But 8 times out of 10, they'll usually print something pretty favorable. That's the risk that we're willing to take because, we've had articles printed in some pretty good trade publications, Houston Chronicle, Dallas Morning News. And when a site selector or consultant or an executive is looking to locate a company into a particular community, one of the things that they do is a Google search, and if you have a proactive business article in one of those publications, it just goes a lot further than an actual advertisement in a magazine. So that's the rationale behind that. Anchor institutions, Katie's done a phenomenal job with the Child Care Initiative, so she's been making some huge strides. So we'll report on that at the next month's meeting. And again, just supporting our local workforce, trying to reintroduce some of the people from the community that are not working because of lack of childcare. So we're working with industry, education, and the private sector on that strategy. And then our current workforce, those are the roundtable discussions, just working with our regional partners. That's something we had not done in the past, bringing in other partners from the area. And then we hosted a Texas Workforce Commissioner, Aaron Demerson, about 3 months ago, which is pretty important because we're coming up on Project Saddle, and he's going to be an integral part of that whole process. And then community convening or convener. That's one thing that we've been tasked with, and it couldn't have happened at a better time when, with this particular project, we were relying and continue to rely on leadership, both at the local and at the state level, coming in and really helping us with that. And that's really what community convening is, bringing in the right players to deliver on certain projects. Talking about delivering some of the metrics, and these are metrics that are approved by the KDC board. So on an annual basis, we need to have at least 30 visits, or not visits, but meetings with 30 different companies. So from our top employers down to some of the mid to small size businesses. Year to date, we're at about 23. On the branding marketing side, social media engagements, it's basically 1 engagement per week. We're at about 35. I'm not a social media expert, but I know that we've got Facebook and Twitter, and we're doing that stuff. Economic development articles, again, just finding a way to get proactive business articles printed about the community. Speaking engagements, podcasts, we've done very well here. So before Katie, it was Teresa, now Katie. Bless you. It was, we get selected to tell not of all things, but the Killdeer story. That's one of the things that really pops up, and a lot of we get asked to speak at conferences about that particular project for a size of our community, how it happened, so on and so forth. So we're good there. Industry roundtables, we're on par as well. On the entrepreneur side, again, we've done more than what we're asked for, the seminars, workshops, events. In the corporate recruitment, again, I mean, there's a lot of leads that are being generated at the moment. And as a result, as I mentioned in my board report, we've got 3 active projects that we're working right now. And then on the reporting and the annual forum, usually on a quarterly basis, plus the annual forum, so we're at 4, so we've got 1 more to go. So now on the budget, and you've got the spreadsheet there in your packet. As you can see, you know, the first 2 years when I first got here, it was, you know, it was COVID. So we took a voluntary cut for the first year of COVID and then going into the second fiscal year. And that's because we had a lot of small businesses coming into our office, and our advice back then was, well, you need to pivot and tighten the belt. So one of the things working with our former city manager is like, well, we need to do the same thing just because, you know, we didn't know what was going to happen. So on top of that, those first 2 years, then we started working the Killdeer project, which takes a lot of our staff hours, which in turn starts turning into actual resources. So that was for almost 3 years, it was a huge, it was expensive. So then next couple of years, it's basically just looking at catching up. So now coming into this fiscal year, we are coming in with a 10% increase ask. So for our EDIC, we would go from 312,000 to about 343,000. Our other 3 stakeholders, that would be 62,500 to 68,750. So that would take us from a $500,000 budget to 550. I'll note then on income, specifically on the Innovation Forum and Courage as well. We really didn't make money there. We didn't have any cash flow there, and that's the transition. We lost my main marketing person, and then in transition from the other, from Katie coming in, which was the week of the actual forum. So we didn't generate the income that we anticipated. On the outside contract fees, you'll notice there's we went over on that one, and that's just because of the project activity that we have at the moment, having to pull in different sources as well as resources. Conference, retreats, prospects, that's where we're gonna bump that particular category up, and that's to allow us again to work at the high level that we've been working with, just to really be a little bit more flexible as to what we're doing.
Do you have the next slide for that?
Oh. No, this isn't the only slide. I thought it was.
Sorry.
It was in our packet.
It was in our packet. Okay.
I've got some handouts. Sorry, I'm going 100 miles an hour here.
You're doing great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
I thought I had seen it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then. So basically, the beginning and end balances are actual cash balances, the 27%.
Thank you.
For next year, it's within the range of, basically having 2 to 3 months of operating expenses, as a backup once we get there.
Are you waiting for questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a comment, Gil. So I came on EIC 2 years ago, and I think my first meeting was when you presented the fiscal 21-22 budget presentation. There was a significant increase in your funding request, and being my first meeting, I was kind of skeptical about the size of the increase year over year. I will say unequivocally that having heard your monthly reports, been involved with the Business and Innovation Forum, seeing the successes that we've had with corporate recruiting, the way you've been working with existing businesses on expansion, workforce development, the leadership and the networking across the state. I have to say you're doing a fabulous, fabulous job. And in my opinion, the return to this community of the investment here is extraordinarily impactful in a positive way, and largely due to your leadership. And thank you, and just say I'm very, very impressed, and hope we continue to Hope you continue to serve our community because I think it's very, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Appel. We found we have to get creative in how we utilize the funds, and yeah, we just have to get creative. But I mean, we're having fun, and that's the important part. I think that's.
Well, I would also say that when you first accepted this position, you sat down with me as a member of the EIC at that time, and I was skeptical. We'd been through previous iterations of KEDC and leadership, and I think words I use, well, I guess the proof will be in the pudding. And I will tell you, you produced the pudding.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran.
I would add, I mean, in my work life, I've seen hundreds of organizations like this, and what we have now under Gil is really, really impressive. And we're getting an incredible return, community return on investment for the amount we're putting in. I mean, I frankly, if Gil came in with a budget that was several $100,000 more than this, I would be very supportive for it.
You win, you lowball the Stony Hill.
Other questions, comments?
Sure. First off, I'm a fan of the work you're doing. There's a lot of cheerleaders up here. You can count me as a cheerleader. But I've been through a lot of budgets too. I've been responsible for a lot of nonprofit budgets, budgets of a church, and the city budget. So when I see things like your marketing line, you're budgeting $10,000, you've always spent more than $10,000. Or when I look at your KEDC Top 40 budget, you're budgeting $12,000, you've always spent more than $12,000. Here's the question. It's a budget question. The item on our agenda is review of budget, not of plan, not of successes, but of the budget. Top 40. If you're going to spend about $16,000, why aren't you budgeting for $16,000?
That's just something that's happened over the years. We typically think it's going to be a certain amount, and then it ends up being more.
Well, I mean, we allow in under the terms of the contract for him to budget up to 10% more than the last budget.
I understand, but we're reviewing a budget
Sure.
that has several large items where the budget amount doesn't match at all what you've spent in the past. I don't understand why that is.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's just, one of those things where we're expecting a certain amount and we're spending, over. And
But
then
you
we
have
just
a
have to make
history
it
of spending over.
I'm sorry?
You have a history in these items of
Mhm.
spending over, so
Yep.
that should inform you as you budget, I would think.
Yeah.
Now, conversely, there are a lot of things of which you've budgeted a large amount and you haven't spent it all. And so, a budget's a blueprint, as you know. And if that blueprint has assumptions that don't pan out, over time, the budgeting process should focus on that, I think. This is over $500,000. To you, that may not be a lot of money, but to me, that's a lot of money. And it's tax money. So when you are budgeting tax money, that we have to say why we support it, I'd appreciate a budget that reflects what you're actually going to do. Any comment?
No, I appreciate your suggestions and your advice on that, and we'll definitely keep that in mind moving forward.
Overall, the budget is in line with what you estimated. But to say that I'm going to spend $500 on milkshakes, and I always spend $20,000 on milkshakes, is not a budget.
You are correct.
All right. Otherwise, as all the other people here, I'm thankful you're in our community. I'm thankful for the work you do. I want you to go out there swinging, and I know you are.
Thank you, Mr. Councilmember.
That's all I have.
Mrs. Hammond, questions, comments?
You looking for a motion?
Well, item 8B, number 2, asks us to entertain a motion. Is anyone willing, or does anyone desire to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
Okay, do we need to read the motion?
Do we need to read the,
Yeah, because this is what's going on, that you all signed or authorized a 3-year agreement last year, subject to a 10% increase over the
Correct.
following 2 years upon your, essentially your approval
So
of
we're
their
approving it
programs.
under our budget?
Yeah.
We don't need to
Well-
approve it separately here?
No, you can. What I suggest you do, what I suggest the motion is you're approving their fulfillment of its obligations as laid out in their existing agreement, which then triggers the 10%. And you don't have to read all of that, but you're approving the fulfillment of their obligations under the agreement.
Okay, since the agreement's already in existence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
may I make a motion to that effect if that would help you? We have a motion and a second already.
We do have a motion and a second on the floor. Do we want to withdraw those so that we can? First motion and second on the floor are,
You want to amend your motion?
You certainly, please do if you would like to.
what should we do?
Well, you're not approving a new agreement. That's the most
Correct, I'm
important
just
thing.
saying, we've got that motion on the table.
Yeah, just withdraw the motion.
I withdraw the motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the second.
Draw the second.
Okay.
I make a motion as recommended by the city attorney.
Does everyone understand that motion? Okay, do we have a second for that motion?
Second.
All right. All in favor, please let it be known by raising your right hand. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gil.
Okay, I will be brief. There we go. Okay, so bringing before you a proposed budget for the EIC itself. It does include the KEDC amount that you just approved. With the EIC approval today, then this will move on for consideration by council through our regular budget process, So pretty straightforward. On revenues, we just have the 2 lines, so sales tax and interest income. So you'll see that fiscal year '24 budget for sales tax is flat with fiscal year '23's budget. That's just given what's going on right now as we're watching sales tax trends. Of course, if that comes better, then that's great, and y'all will have more net income than we estimated. But right now, just with the trends that we're seeing now, what I'll say with that is a lot of things have changed in the last, 3 years. And while it looks like we're leveling in sales tax and those kind of things, right now through June, we're 36% ahead of this same time in '23. So in 3 years, it's pretty stable growth, in my opinion, on the sales tax side. And we did have some influx of money here and there through COVID and those kind of things, but it's not reducing. It's at least staying level with
Can
what
I
we're
ask a
seeing
question
last
about
year.
that? Are you making
Yeah.
that same assumption on the city budget itself?
Mhm.
Okay.
For right now, keep in mind, we get sales tax all the way through November that's actually counted for this fiscal year, so it makes it really hard to estimate. So we kind of do the best we can in the last few months of the year just based on what we've seen over trends. So, I don't really see that flat as a bad news. It's just a changing environment, and so we're still leaps and bounds of where we were a couple of years ago. So to me, that's still good news. Interest revenue, as you know, Trina talked about that a little bit in your financial report. We expect to see the rates that we're at now hold at least for several more months, and so we're continuing to watch that. If it trends down, then we'll make some different decisions. We don't have large amounts of cash with you guys invested, so shouldn't be a big impact there except for the pools. So that'll be the first to drop, so we watch that on a regular basis just to see. So pretty tight on sales tax, and we realize that, but we'll continue to monitor that. It doesn't affect you guys as far as your overall revenues as a total as it does on a citywide budget because there's a different dependability factor there. So, okay, quick look at your expenses. So total expenses budgeted for FY24, just on the administrative 569,400. That's with a 2.5% increase on City of Kerrville administrative fees and 10% from KEDC, give or take, that we just discussed and was just approved. And then you'll see a line in there for some board training that was requested. So we do have that in there for any training opportunities that come up for this body.
So I put that in there for y'all, just as a consideration. there's Texas Municipal League and Texas Economic Development Corporation, or Council offers seminars, either in person, online. TML does a day-and-a-half seminar out in Bastrop that's primarily focused on economic development. The Comptroller's Office speaks, economic development attorneys will speak at it. Cities will provide examples of things that they've done from large cities and small cities, et cetera. So wanted to put that in y'all's budget for consideration. If those things come up, we would put that out there and y'all could go to some of those trainings, so.
Questions or thoughts about that now, or do you want to wait till we finish budget to include that in general thoughts?
Okay. Debt service is per our debt schedule, so this is outlined, and those amounts are set. So right at $1 million there. And then project contributions, so we only budget what's committed as of right now. So, these change throughout the year. And you'll see here kind of a layout of what Trina discussed in your financial report, with the expectation that we'll pay out the rest of the hospital funding there, the utilities for downtown streetscape, the rest of the river trail, or a piece of the river trail there, and then the Travis Street pump upgrades that we talked about at the last meeting. So
It's a very, very minor question, a minor amount. Why is the 2020 River Trail going up $2,000, $2,500?
Where are you? Oh, that debt service.
Say that again?
Debt service.
Why is the debt service going
Oh.
up? Isn't that fixed?
I'd have to look, it's not fixed, and so it's fixed, yes, based on the payment schedule that was in the ordinance. So every debt piece has a little bit different, we see it in every fund. You may have $100,000 difference this year, the next year, maybe you have less principal or more principal in one year than the next. I can look and find out, but that debt schedule.
Not worth chasing it,
No, but it's set when we do, when you do and agree to the ordinance and we sign the ordinance, it's set for all the way out through the pattern, so. It varies just a hair from year to year sometimes.
Just out of curiosity, what's the approximate total outstanding balance of the debt right now?
Do you have that here? Can you get it while we're?
Our last debt payment was 2035.
If you don't mind, I'll talk through this if you'll just get she can get it. I mean, it's.
Not pertinent to this, I'm just curious.
Yeah, no problem. So total projects approved right now, 2.1 million, expected to be paid out in '24, with total expenditures of just over 3.7 million, and then estimated net revenue of 1,663 there at the bottom. And that is really it. Pretty simple on the budget side. We don't have a lot of independent line items that we budget, but happy to answer any questions you might have on individual things, and Trina will get you the debt answer.
I think it's right at 11 million. It goes from 1,090,000 from now until 2031, and then down to 600,000. And I'm assuming the last 2 years, so I'm making an assumption on 2 years.
And those are payments, so it depends on principal and interest, be a little different than that.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is ask you all if you have any questions, comments, or items to consider, and then do we have any speakers signed up for this item? Okay.
So have people from the EIC gone to training before?
It's a new item.
Well, so I'm bringing this from previous city. So we would have boards and we would have line items in our budgets for boards and commissions to attend, whether it's planning and zoning, they would go to APA conference, planning conferences, EDC. It's out there and it's available. So it's we can do a lot of that in-house. Sometimes it's nice to get a, crash course in all of it. And you learn a lot. You meet a lot of people who are in economic development, a lot of discussions going on. You see what other cities are doing, ways that they're being innovative. So it's a nice thing for the boards.
So how do you foresee just pushing that out to us whenever something comes available, or how do you foresee?
Yeah, so I'll have, if y'all are amenable to it, I'll put the calendars out there for, there's sales tax workshops throughout the state. San Antonio has the closest one. That other conference is in Bastrop in October timeframe, and that's a day-and-a-half conference. So we can put that out there and see if there's interest.
There's probably on demand.
There is, yeah. So there's plenty of those for sure, and TE, Texas Economic Development Council, offers those online as well, so.
We could push that website link out so
Yep.
that everybody could see what maybe was available on demand, and then when something comes up that would be live, that would be beneficial, then we'll have a calendar, or you'll push it out to us, something like that.
I'll send it out if we're okay with it, I'll send it out.
I don't see any harm in budgeting for it. If we end up using it, we use
Right.
it. If we don't, we don't.
That's right,
I
yeah.
don't have any issue with it.
Right,
I'll send it out to all y'all, as soon as I can, sometime this week.
it's a good idea. Okay, I'm not hearing anybody. Any comments, questions? All right. So I will entertain a motion to approve the EIC proposed budget for fiscal year 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Motion a second, all in favor? Thank you. All right. So at this time, we've reached the item 9, executive session, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session, and I would say we probably want to go upstairs today.
If we could, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My technical difficulties last time working the computer here, it's a lot easier to have the
That's
other
no
computer.
problem.
Make a motion that we go into executive session under,
I'll go up there.
under section 551.071 and 551.08.
We have a motion?
Second.
Motion a second, all in favor?
Yeah,
Do I gavel us into executive session?
You can.
I motion
As hard as you want.
Poor Stuart just sitting back there going, we're never gonna go.
I know.
Go on record.
Hey.
At 6:58, we adjourn from executive session, enter back into regular session. On the Windridge project, what we'd like to do is to express our support of this project and authorize staff to move forward with the items discussed in executive session to finalize that agreement, to be brought forward for final approval at a future meeting. Okay. On the other item from executive session, do I have any motions?
So moved.
Okay. Motion being to call a public hearing at the next regular meeting for the Mount Saddle project to be considered.
Second?
Okay, motion second. All in favor? Anybody want to do anything else? All right, let's adjourn the meeting. 6:59.
Thank you.